me just give you a quick explanation what we're doing here with Koala. So this is Koala Sampler by Elf Audio. It's a sampler that is pretty similar to the SP404, SP303. And I keep comparing it to the SP303 and the SP404 every time I teach this class, and it's not a fair assessment. I mean, it has a lot of similar things, but I think this is more comparable to even an MPC, simply because you can see things like the wave, which you can't do with SP, even SP12. But why I now I'm deciding not to compare it to the SP necessarily, because it gives you 16 pads as opposed to an SP. If you have an SP3 303, it only has 8, so it's literally the half, which really doesn't matter. And the 404 only gives you 12 pads, so that's why I just kind of felt like it wasn't fair to compare it. But it does give you a lot of the things that a lot of SP users are used to. For instance, the performance pad, or performance part, which in this case I'm adding what's compression and a little bit of reverb to this particular beat. And I'm gonna explain all that in a minute. So just to kind of get started on how to be able to record, if I wanted to record a sound, gotta make sure that my record mic is on. So if I wanted to record anything, so in this case, I have my interface connected to my to this iPad, and the way that I'm connecting it is the way that I'm able to get sounds into here. So, but not having it connected to the iPad or to an interface, you're still able to capture sounds using the built-in microphone, either on the iPad or iPhone, or even for Android, because this app is available for both Android and iOS. And if you have a MacBook or an iMac or something that's not an iOS device, that's more for computing, you actually can download it for free. And I believe the cost for the Android and for iOS devices like iPads and iPhones is roughly around $4 to $5. All right, so let's get into the sampling. So the sampling part of this is pretty straightforward. Like I said, in this case for me, I'm getting the sound from the microphone, which is this guy right here, and it's going into my audio interface. So I can record, hey, myself. Hey, 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 hey. Okay, so you can hear my sound. Hey. Let me see if I can clear it up for everybody. Maybe this helps being able to see it a little better. Let's try that. Hey, hey, hey. I don't know if that helps. Doesn't help me. Okay, here we go. So we have the sound. Hey, hey, hey. Okay. We have a couple of controls here that we can affect the sound with. For instance, our volume. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Okay. The pitch. Hey, 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 hey. And the pan. I don't know if you guys would be able to hear it out there. What pan allows you to do is panorama, so it could allow you to go from left to right. So. Hey, 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 hey. So if you have headphones on, or if you have stereo speakers connected to it, you might be able to hear it panning from left to right. All right. So these are just some of the things that you could do to edit it immediately, whatever sound you have going in. Now, the other thing that we could do is if you hit edit, and you also have the delete button there, so also be careful with that. If you hit edit, now what we see is what's the wave. So the sound that I recorded, hey, is right there. Now, you notice that there's a part that is highlighted and there's a part that is darker. So the highlighted part is the part that's playing. Hey, hey, hey. I could also move where the beginning and the end of that is. So at the very beginning, there's a little bit of air. Hey. Right before you hear the sound. Hey, hey. Okay. And also at the very end, you see that it's a little sound right here,
Hey.
little click. So what you want to do is once you sample the sound, you want to be able to choose the beginning and the end of the sound. In this case, this is what we're going to call a one-shot sound because it doesn't have a rhythm. It's just a single sound, and we could probably use it in our song somehow. So the first thing I want to do is locate the very beginning of the sound.
Hey.
Now, the phrase that I use here is hey, which is Hey, right? Hey. So the H, you hear the first breath of the first sound of that letter.
Hey.
And I'm going to take the one shot off too. So you have one shot, reverse, loop. Okay? So the one shot is just that. It's the one shot. It plays all the way through. If I take the one shot feature off, what now is going to be a sustain button. So basically something that I have to press and hold down. I have to keep sustain in order for it to play all the way through. So you see, once I press it just once, it cuts off.
Hey.
But as I press it and hold it down, it plays all the way through.
Hey. Hey. Hey.
So you want to be mindful about what kind of sound you're sampling. So in this case, it's my voice. I'm saying the word hey. So once you find the beginning sound or the beginning part of your sound,
Hey.
now I want to create the end part of my sound. So I want to shorten it. And you could also zoom in. You could use two fingers. And if you want to control where it starts and stops, it's using just the one finger on the iPad. So I want to cut out that last little clip, right? So now that I have the parts that I want to keep highlighted, I'm going to hit crop, and I will crop. And these are these controls over here on this side. Now what crop just did was just chop up the part that I had highlighted. So now I'm left with this.
Hey.
So you notice there's no clip at the very end.
Hey. Hey. Hey.
Okay. So the other things that we could do with this, aside from the volume, the pitch, the pan, I can keep it as a one shot. I can play it in reverse. So this is what that sounds like.
Yeah.
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 The other thing I could do is create a loop.
Hey. 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 Hey.
Now you notice that with the loop, it doesn't maintain on. You have to keep pressing and
Hey.
holding it
Hey.
down. Now I'm going to explain how we could use this in our sequencing or performance part of our beat. All right. The next step I'm going to show you is what these other things do. So you got the attack, the release, and the tone. So the attack and the release, you can think of the attack as it being sort of a fade in. So take it off loop. I'm going to leave it as a one shot. So I'm going to press play. This is
Hey.
normal.
Hey. 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 Hey.
Now you can increase the intensity of the attack as well as the release. Okay. Now what this intensity does is where you get sort of that fade in. So if I put it all the way in, you're going to hear it fade slowly in.
Hey. Hey.
And the shorter I keep it, the faster the attack.
Hey. 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 Hey.
Okay. And for the release, well, if I have it as a one shot,
Hey. 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 Hey.
the less release that I have on, the longer the sound plays. The more release I add,
Hey. Hey.
it kind of cuts it out. Now it kind of also acts a little bit the opposite. This is really, I mean, you could use this in several ways, but the way that I like using it is, for instance, if I wanted to turn this hey into an instrument, which you can on this app, and by doing that is I'll add a little bit of release. I'll make sure that the one shot is off because I want to be able to play it sort of like an instrument. And by like an instrument, I mean like a piano or an organ or something that where you press the key and it's immediate. You hear a sound, but as you let go, you hear a little bit of sustain or a little bit of release. Most sounds don't just cut off the minute you're not like most instruments rather don't just cut off just because you stop touching it. As soon as you hit a key or strike a note, there's still some a little bit of release. So this is without it. And you notice it cuts out right away. And I'm going to add some release.
Hey, 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 hey.
And what I meant by turning it into an instrument, I'm going to go move ahead a little bit, is just for instant gratification, is go into the sequence window. And under the sequence, don't pay attention to anything that's up here other than this
Hey,
sound. What I can do with in the sequence window is, if you see this piano, I'm going to press the piano, and then I'm going to choose a sound. It says choose. So I'm going to choose a sound, which is that hey, and it opens up my piano grid.
hey,
Hey.
hey, 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 hey,
So there's a lot of creative things you can do with that, obviously. The last part that we have, well, the last couple of parts that we have over here, I did speak about the crop. I didn't talk about normalize. What normalize does, basically, it'll bring up the volume of the sound. So let me just make a copy. And to record was just to press and hold, or in this case, I have my settings set up for, pardon me, I have my settings set up for one shot enabled by default, and then I have the hold to record off. Now, the reason I have hold to record off is because I don't want to be sitting here and pressing the button in order for it to record. I want to just be able to press it once, record what I want, and then when I'm done recording, I can take it off. I want to just be able to press it once, record what I want, and then when I'm done recording. Now, I also have the one shot enabled. These settings are definitely up to you. I want to just be able to erase that. And that's how you erase also. So I'm going to make a copy of this hey, because I don't want to destroy it. All right, and then I'm going to show you what else we could do to edit it. So the crop, I already showed you what that was. It was just to be able to like shorten it and then keep that part. Now normalize, what it's going to do is going to up the volume of my sound. So I'm going to hit normalize. And you see it got louder.
hey, 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 hey.
All right, so it got louder.
Hey, hey.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is the choke group. Now, in this particular beat, I don't think they had updated the. I don't think they updated the software quite yet. So they have now is what's called choke groups, and this is why I wanted to say also that I don't like comparing this so much so to the SP303 or 404, because it's not something that was inside that. This is a feature that's more. It's available in a lot more expensive samplers, such as the MPC. MPC 2000, for instance, have choke groups. And what choke groups allow you to do is basically, if you want to have something sound more natural, or even if, in this case, of long samples. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to be able to cut some of those sounds out. So let's say, for instance, this. That and then that horn break. If I wanted to stop one from playing over the other, I can create a choke group. Now, Koala gives you 6 choke groups. So I'm going to add those 2 sounds into the first choke group. So now what it would do is, this is the longer sound. This next sound would cut off that next sound, the sound that's in the same group. So I can't play them both at the same time. Now let me just do that again slower. So this is the sound with the huh and that horn break. Okay, and then I'm actually going to change what this sound is. I'm going to choose another part of the song so it sounds. There we go. So it's the huh and the ha. But you notice that the ha is just a ha by itself. And the huh has that break. So I can essentially just. Okay. And really the choke groups is also useful for instance if you have drums. So I'm gonna start going into what I did with this particular beat. So for instance, in this case, I don't have any choke groups set up on. Well, I do actually. So if you notice that once I press this, I have this set up as a loop because I kind of want to have sort of like that trappy type of hi hats. But I also have this open hi hat. And when you think about a drum or a drummer, when they're playing the drums, the hi hat is are basically two cymbals that are one on top of each other, right? So the sound that you get like that is when both cymbals are closed. That's what's called the closed hi hat. An open hi hat would be both cymbals open and it'll be more splashier, like that. So if this were a real drum or a real hi hat, those two sounds can't coexist together. So if I'm playing, so for instance, that splashier sound is longer, and you want to create a choke group because if let's say for instance you go from this to this, it'll cut it out and sound more natural. Okay, so let me get into the actual beat, right? So there's a lot of parts that are happening in here. The first part that I want to talk about is where I got the sample. So we already spoke about how to capture a sample. Now, where do you get samples from? Now, with this, you could literally just walk around and when we were out and about before all this is all everything that's happened, um, every time in my travels, I would usually have either my iPad or my phone with me, and I'll be capturing sounds. So especially like traveling around New York in the subways, you would always find musicians, and I would approach them and see if I could record them and try to get the clearest recording. And sometimes it's not even about getting clear recording because what I sampled here is not a clear recording, even though it is a sample from something I found online. And my source for this was actually the Library of Congress, so I don't have to worry about copyright issues. So let me show you my other window. See if it shows. Okay, cool. All right. So this is called Citizen DJ. It's the Library of Congress has sounds, and let me just get into. Okay, so this is the website Citizen DJ. Now, one of the things that I really love about this, I guess they're still working on it. It's in the beta stages. But you could choose from, I guess, these different collections, these different libraries. This particular sound that I got, which is, I'll play you the full audio, was called Give a Man a Horse, He Can Ride. It was recorded in 1921 and it was written by O'Hara and Jeffrey Middleton, Arthur Middleton, James Thomason, and Jeffrey O'Hara. So this is the original sound. And it was very brief, you know, and like I said, it was not very clear because you hear all that crackle, and I'm pretty sure it was probably because it was off of a turntable or phonograph, and it was an old, very old recording. It was 1921. But just real quick, just about a little bit about Citizen DJ. What's really cool is that you can kind of just go and explore. You could remix or browse and download. For this case, since I'm using Koala and as a live sampler, I like just kind of finding sounds. So what's cool about Citizen DJ, I can just drag around in this browser. Let me turn the volume down a little bit. And then if there's a sound that I like, and it is like really micro chopped, so you can just, so it's really whatever jumps at you. So let's see what that sounds like. Play in context. And it tells you also who the artist is, and then you can go into more detail of the sound. But let's get back to the sound that I did capture, which is this: give a man a horse. So I believe I have the full sound here. Okay, so here's the full sound that I captured. Nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry about that. That was another sample. So what I ended up doing was capturing the sound. So the first thing you notice is that I pitched it down. That's the original. I brought it down 7 semitones. And then the other thing I did was I sort of went and I chopped up every part of it. So if you notice that 1, 2, 3, 4, those 4 parts became chops, and that's what this became. Okay. The other thing I didn't talk about was tone. Now, what tone does, if you listen, this is without any tone, without me using the tone. And what tone really is more like a filter. If I go in one direction, all you hear is the lows. And if I go in the other direction, all you hear is the highs, and the lows disappear. Now, in the case of this particular beat, I wanted to take away some of that graininess, some of that crackle out. So the only way that I saw fit doing that was using the tone. It doesn't take it away completely, but it's less audible. Now I also cut it, and I use a little bit of attack and release as well. Now the reason I use attack on this particular beat was because what I also feel like what attack does on shorter samples, it kind of gives it sort of that side chain effect. Okay, and what I mean by that is that what side chaining is a compress is basically using your compressor to lower the volume of an incoming sound alongside of your kick, so that way your kick or your bass sounds more prominent in the mix. Okay, and then what I did was I just copied those same sounds and just pitched them higher. So I have. Cool. Now, my favorite part about me even coming up with this beat was just trying to figure out how can I make this sound different. So the first thing that I came up with was the drums. And let me talk about the drums a little bit. So some of these drums I got from actually one of our BB workshop leaders, Samuel Lee, or Sam A on the beat. He has a drum kit that I've been using a lot lately, and I actually was able to sample it and put it on this guy, doing a lot of sampling. And I have his drum kit like just ready for me to just make whatever sound I want. I don't know if you can hear this. So obviously I'll run it through my my mixer. But what I did was I captured some of these beats, that drum, so hi-hats, and then doing that. And then the kick, I believe I sampled from me just sitting on my couch. I slapped the couch really hard, and then I ended up doing a lot of editing as far as like bringing the tone down, setting up the release. All right, and this is what we got. And I also left it pretty loose. Initially, um, I don't like using the quantize as much, but it does help you at least adding some of the beats. It really depends how you like to work it. I like using the quantize if I'm just trying to get the very first set of beats in it. Usually, like the kick, I'll use for the first kick, so that way it always lands on the one, and then everything else I'll probably just take the quantize off and leave it pretty loose. Let me see if we could focus a little more. That's a little better. Okay, so the BPM. So if we go into the sequence mode. So this is from sample. I just kind of went over how are you able to utilize your samples. Now is the sequence part. So this is what a blank sequence looks like. It usually opens up on once you first open this up, it usually is sets your BPM at 120 beats per minute. I change it to 185. And then most of these are usually set up for 1 bar. I mean, that's the default. Is always set at 120 beats or 110 beats per minute, and your bar is always set to 1. So in this case, this beat that I created, I set it at 185 beats per minute, and just so you can hear what the metronome sounds like that at 185. And I did that really because I was trying to create that trap drum, and it's a lot harder when you're trying to do that when it's at its original BPM, which I believe is what's that? Would be 92.5, I guess. But so yeah, so I can do things like that. So this is what that part sounds like. And that's what it sounds like with the metronome. Now, so the first part that I came up was with the drum. I found the drum, then I found that sample. So let's look at our chops. So that's what I came up with as far as the melody. Oops, and I am not showing you my camera. Sorry about that. Here we go. So these are the samples, and this is the melody I came up with after chopping it up. And then I took that same sample, pitched it up, and created. And that's what it sounds like with the beat. And my favorite part of this whole beat is really the intro, because it took me a little bit of time to kind of figure out, well, do I just want that to loop? How do I want to make this a little more interesting? And kind of just fiddling around with. Okay, and what helps me to do that too is also having having the choke groups. Okay, because what I did was I put all these sounds on their own choke group, And what that allows me to do is I don't have to worry about me pressing two sounds and then playing them both play at the same time. And I don't have to worry. Well, I have to worry about my timing as far as me playing it, but I don't have to worry about if I'm gonna be overlapping on a sample. So, like I said, my favorite part of this whole beat was really just coming up with the intro. So here's the intro. So that took me a little time to kind of come up with. And the challenge really was to try to figure out what rhythm do I want to play with that metronome. So let's play the metronome real quick. See, it sounds very fast. But that very first click is what I'm looking for. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And my goal was to really hit that first note every time I hear that one. So that okay. And the same thing was done here in the bottom. And then the combination of it all is this. Let's hear that. Here it drops. Okay, now let me explain everything else that I have on here. Now, the reason why I have so many different sequences is because I'm also trying to learn how to use this to create an entire song, which you can do on Koala. But there are obviously there's some limitations, right? So if I really wanted to get this EQ'd and compression right and all that kind of stuff, I would have to like export these as stems. Which the great thing about Koala is that, and I use Ableton as my main DAW to create music on. So what this allows you to do is to import and connect it as Ableton link, and or also import this as an Ableton file. And if you don't use Ableton, it doesn't matter. You could also use this in various other DAWs. The only reason why is a little more direct with Ableton because it uses Ableton Link, and it opens up as all these individual chops, all the individual sequences will open up in Ableton in their what is it called, their session view. So I could see everything as if I were seeing it over here. Now, me doing all these different copies, and just let me explain what that looks like. So let's say, for instance, this is a. So these are just the hi-hats. I created its own version of the hi-hat. And I was, prior to me learning even how to use this with Ableton, I was just kind of using this the same way I use my SP303. I would create my beats on SP303, and then just each individual part, I would just silence everything and just let those individual parts play. So, for instance, if I had a kick, snare, and hi-hat, I wouldn't play the kick, snare, and hi-hat together. I would play them individually the way they were playing the part. It's a harder, more convoluted version of what this allows me to do simpler, which is just send it as a ALS file and then just open it up there. And everything I did here, from my natural playing to me messing up or doing whatever, appears there the way that I made it here, which then I can go clean up. But in this case, this beat sounds good the way it does, in my opinion. The last sound that I didn't talk about was this bass sound. The bass actually got off of this guy, also my little pocket operator. Big shout out to Building Beats. I'm still holding on to this one. I wasn't able to give it back for the pandemic. But this one has some pretty good sounds built in, and he even has a little bass sound. Let's see if I can find it. So obviously I had it plugged into my sound card so I can get it at full volume, and that's what I sampled. Kept it very simple and basic. The only thing I think I did was add a little bit of attack and release to it, just so I can gives off that little bit of side chain compression sound, because this is full on. You hear that kick. So that attack on that bass kind of gives a little more room for this to sound. Um, so that's what you see over here. And then as far as how to make a copy of the sequences or how to record a sequence, if I wanted to, I can just hit record. And that's just a quick way to record your sequence. Now, and of course, I didn't have my quantize on. So that's without the quantize, and I have swing. And if you notice, without the quantize, I really want that kick to be the first sound that you hear. Without the quantize on, I clearly missed that first sound. So listen to it again. That first sound is really this. So if I wanted to re-record that part, right, I'm going to put my quantize on, and I'm going to clear that sound. And that's how you add and take away sound. So to record, all you have to hit is hit the record button. Now there's no, other than the metronome, there's no like 2 or 1 bar counting. There's no counting. You hit record, immediately you got to start recording. Now what you can do, since this is a very short, there's only 1 bar, I just can wait for it to repeat and then just wait to hit the beat. So here we go. And now, because it's quantized, and what quantizing does, it just brings you to the nearest note. So even if your timing is pretty bad, this kind of helps out a little bit. Now, in the sequence, the same way that I'm able to copy notes, now once I'm in sequence mode, I can't really do anything to these notes. Any of these sounds are just what they are. I can't copy them. As opposed to when I'm on this mode here, I can take a sound and I can just copy it to another blank pad, and it makes an exact copy. But in sequence mode, I'm not able to make copies of the sounds. I can make copies of the sequence. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to make a copy of that. I would just carry it over, and there you go. I just made a copy. They're 2 of the same. Why would you want to do that? Well, one of the main reasons that I do that is because sometimes I want to extend a certain sequence, and maybe just add a very minute thing, and I want that rhythm to go. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to do that with this, right? So right now it's a 1 bar loop, and if I drag it and put it on top, it gives me 2 options. Well, 3 options. I can mix, add to the end, or cancel. What mixing does is, let's say, for instance, let me cancel. Let's say, for instance, here I added that bass. Now, because it's 1 bar and I add that bass to it, it's going to be repetitive. All you're going to hear is that bass, kick, snare, hi-hat, right? But let's say I wanted to extend it. Let's see. I would drag this over and I would add to the end. So essentially changing my 1 bar loop into 2 bars now. So I can add a little more variation. if I put it back to 1 bar, this is what 1 bar of that sounds like. Now I messed up there. So I'm trying to show you that I also want to add this open hi-hat to it. Now, if I mess up in a note, I have undo, clear, and this is the way to change my bars. So I want to clear that sound. So the cool thing about this is that this is all just MIDI, okay? And these MIDI notes I can change for different notes. So as long as I'm hitting this pad, I can change it for another sound, and that would have to be through my sample, so I can switch those sounds around. But if I want to just clear the sound, I just hit clear, hold it down, and then press the sound I want to clear. And there you go. Now I don't have that open hi-hat. Cool. Now, if the other option was to add, so I'm going to erase this and make a copy of that. And let's say, for instance, I want to add. Now, what adding does, and I mean, this is probably a pretty bad example. Well, actually, no. So let's say, for instance, I have these two. These two are identical sounding, except for what I just added to this one. That flute. This one doesn't have it. It has the bass, the kick, and the rest of the drums. But let's say, for instance, I wanted to add a sound to it. So let's say, for instance, in this one, I'm going to remove the kick. So I have a variation. I have this. That's without the kick. It's just the bass. Now this is everything. Now let's say, for instance, I want to add that flute to it, and I don't want to just play it again. So I can add it where I'll say mix. Okay. So now this adds all those same sounds. So now they're identical, right? But I still want to take the kick out of this one. So now we got this. And I could jump between those two. Now, what I ended up doing on this one over here was kind of a combination of all that. I found all those individual pieces, and then I decided how I want them to play. That's also part of the performance, but in this case, I did it on the sequence because I don't want to sit here and just decide and do it live. So I want the sequence to start with this as my intro, mix in with this part in here. So I have that first part playing the first 2 bars. The second part of that intro playing on the 3rd bar, and then going back to that first one on the 4th bar. So let's listen to that and count. Okay. So here's the intro. That's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. So I'm sorry, it's on the. This is 8 bars in total. Whew, I didn't even realize that one. So it's really 2, 3, 4, 2, 4. So that first part is really 2 bars. So this is really 2 bars, or 4 bars in this case because it's 185. So it's really 2 bars, and then it's 2 bars each part of those intros. So it's 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that was 8 bars in total. Okay, and that's just the intro. The way I did that, again, let me explain. I just made copies of that, and let me find a blank place I can throw this at. I got so much stuff on this project. All right, so all I did was just grab that and just start adding on to it. So you see how I made a copy, and I'm just going to add on to it, and I'm going to add to the end. You don't want to mix these. You want to add to the end so it doubles it up or triples it up. In this case, we're going to be doing multiple versions of that. And then here's the second part. Again, I'm moving it from one sequence to the other. So I'm going to add that there. I'm going to add to the end. And then I'm going to grab the last one and do the same. Add to the end. And let me just add, too, that this is one of the things that I love about using samplers and using this kind of technology to create. It's sort of like creating with a collage, right? So you might see something like a picture or a magazine article or, whatever. You see some sort of image that you want to kind of use. The image on itself, it is what it is, right? It is an image of a car, let's say, for instance. But let's say you just want to take the tires out and you want to add it to a different car. So you could do that as a collage. You could just use that one part of a picture and just add it to another picture, and boom, now you have a totally different picture. So this is kind of like what I'm doing with sampling. I'm taking these songs that exist or these sounds that exist in their own context and switch them around and kind of reusing them or recycling them. So this is what we came up for the intro. And one of my favorite things about that is that I didn't play with the quantize, so it sounds very loose. All right. So I'm going to go over to our performance window. Now let's go back to this sound. Now what the performance windows really is for you to create the sound itself and perform it, okay? So I have all these individual parts, right? So I have this intro, I have that intro, I have this part, and then I have this part here. It's just a variation of that same sound. Now, I currently have, so let me just explain some of the things that you see over here. You have your crush, you have your pitch, you have your combo, ring, reverb, stutter, gate, filter. Then you have your cutter, your reverse, dub, tempo delay, talk box, vibro flange, sorry, dirty and compression. So this is without any of the stuff. This is just sounds pretty good, right? What I did was just, if you press the hold button, and you can basically hold any of these effects. Now performance is really just for you to perform it live. So this is how that would look like. So as you see, I can press multiple effects and they all do different things. So like our filter works as just that, as a filter. Now you notice that it's momentary. So the minute I stop pressing whatever it is that I'm doing and I let go, it goes back to normal. Now what the hold allows me to do is, let's say for instance, I really like the compression on it. So let's listen to what compression does to the song. So you saw without it, the compression, it sort of boosts the the volume up a little bit, but it does a little more than that. Especially for the kind of sound that I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get sort of like a boom bapish, lo-fi type sound out of this, and which is kind of the reason why I did that to the bass and the drums, where I kind of created that attack and release, so that way it kind of gives it sort of like a pumping effect. Adding the compression to it adds more to that sound. Okay, and the other thing that I added was a little bit of reverb. Now you can tell, obviously, the reverb. The more I add it, you get to hear it a lot more. So you could do subtle things with this and get it to sound as good as you want. In this case, I just added a little bit, and I feel like it just adds a little more spiciness to the drums, and to the overall sound. So I really don't have a lot of time left. Um, okay. Um, so what I'd like to end this with is to see for the next class, or if anybody's interested in to give me some ideas for samples. Like I showed everybody before, I'm using Citizen DJ, um, mainly because it's I won't have any issues of sampling. Um, Obviously, everybody is familiar with copyright laws. You're really not able to sample a lot of music, but what the music that's on the Library of Congress is are free to use. And also, if you want to just have some fun on the Citizen DJ, they also have an app that allows you to create a beat. I can show you that real quick before we leave. I have 5 minutes left. Okay, so let me show you that real quick before we head out, so everybody see what that looks like. So let's say, for instance, I go and I choose free music, go to remix, and here's my little DAW, my little player. It automatically makes like random beats. So this is what it does randomly. And even using that, to me, has been very inspiring, because it kind of chops it up in ways that you haven't even thought about. So I'm gonna just hit shuffle item, and it's gonna change from this item called play game to something just random. There you go, ancient heavy tech donjon. Right? And then even the drums, the drum breaks, these are all sounds that they have internally in the app. So they have from Akai MPC, the SP12, the Lin. So you can choose different type of drums, and that's what it sounds like. And you could sample from that also, which is kind of great. You change the BPM too. So there's a lot of good things that you can find on here too. And then it even gives you the name of what I'm sampling. So, and it says specifically, this work has been dedicated to the public domain by its creator, thus is free to use and reuse without restriction. You can copy, modify, distribute, and perform the work, even for commercial purposes, all without asking permission. Attribution is recommended but not required. So I would definitely give props to whoever sample you're using. Sort of the same way that I would when I would approach players on the subway. I would support them by either purchasing one of their CDs, and if I didn't get a good recording from them live there, I would just get it from their CD, and I obviously ask for their permission. Um, and to this date, I haven't had anybody who was like, no, I don't want you to use my music. But you will find that. So to kind of bypass some of that, you could just use things like the Library of Congress, or just record yourself and your friends. But once again, thank you everybody for tuning in and checking us out. Everybody have a great day. Be safe out there. Peace.